At our 15th wedding anniversary, my mill publicly announced that my husband only married me to climb the career ladder. I-32F stood frozen, champagne flute in hand, as my mother-in-law's words echoed through the elegantly decorated banquet hall. "Let's toast to 10 years of my son's brilliant career move," she announced with a sly smirk, gesturing towards me. The room fell silent. Dozens of eyes darted between my husband and me. I felt my cheeks burn as the implications of her statement sank in. Our entire relationship, our decade-long marriage, reduced to nothing more than a calculated business decision in front of all our friends and family. My mind raced back to how we met. Fresh out of college, I was working as an intern at a prestigious law firm. He was a junior associate, ambitious and charming. We bonded over late nights, poring over case files, and shared dreams of making partner one day. When he proposed 2 years later, I was over the moon. I thought I'd found my soulmate, someone who understood my drive and shared my goals. Now, as I stood in my carefully chosen anniversary gown, I wondered if it had all been a lie. I searched my husband's face for any sign of denial or shock, but found only a carefully blank expression. My stomach churned. Had he known about this all along? Was I really just a stepping stone in his meticulously planned career path? The silence stretched on, becoming unbearable. Finally, my father cleared his throat and raised his glass, attempting to salvage the situation. "To the happy couple," he said weakly. A few murmured echoes followed, but the damage was done. I excused myself, needing air. As I pushed through the heavy oak doors, I heard raised voices behind me. My husband was confronting his mother, but her words kept ringing in my ears. Outside, the cool night air offered little comfort. I leaned against the wall, trying to make sense of it all. Had there been signs I missed? Times when his career seemed to take precedence over our relationship. I thought back to cancelled date nights, postponed vacations, always with work as the excuse. But then I remembered the small moments, too. The way he'd bring me coffee in bed on Sunday mornings. How he'd listen intently when I talked about my own cases, offering insights and encouragement. Could all of that have been an act? I heard footsteps approaching and turned to see my best friend. She wrapped me in a tight hug. "What do you want to do?" she whispered. I took a deep breath. "I need answers," I said firmly. Re-entering the hall, I saw my husband in heated discussion with his parents. Our eyes met across the room, and I gestured for him to join me in a private corner. "Is it true?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I knew well. "It's complicated," he began. My heart sank. "So it is true," I said flatly. "No, I mean not entirely," he sighed heavily. "When we first met, yes, I saw an opportunity. Your family's connections, your own brilliant mind, I knew being with you could open doors for me. I felt sick. So our whole relationship was a lie?" "No," he said forcefully, grasping my hands. "Listen to me. Yes, I had ulterior motives at first, but then I got to know you. Really know you. I fell in love with your passion, your kindness, your quirky sense of humor. By the time I proposed, it had nothing to do with my career, and everything to do with wanting to spend my life with you. I wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at me. Why didn't you ever tell me?" He looked ashamed. "I was afraid you'd leave me if you knew the truth about how it started. And then, as time went on, it seemed less and less relevant. I love you, truly and completely." I pulled my hands away, needing space to think. "I need time," I said. He nodded, looking devastated. "I understand. I'm so sorry. For what it's worth, these past 10 years have been the happiest of my life, and it has nothing to do with my career." As he walked away, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was my mother-in-law looking smug. "I hope you're not too upset, dear. It's just business after all." Anger flared within me. "Our marriage is not a business transaction," I hissed. "And you had no right to air your twisted assumptions in public." She seemed taken aback by my vehemence. "Come now, surely you must have known. A rising star like my son marrying an intern? It was obvious to everyone. Obvious to everyone except me, apparently," I replied bitterly. "Tell me, does it bring you joy to try and destroy your son's marriage?" A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. I thought you knew. I was just tired of the pretense." "The only pretense here is the idea that you care about your son's happiness," I snapped. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a marriage to salvage. No thanks to you." I walked away, leaving her stammering behind me. The party was in full swing now, guests chattering nervously and shooting curious glances my way. I caught sight of my husband speaking with his father, who looked furious. My own parents approached, concern etched on their faces. "Honey, are you all right?" my mother asked gently. I shook my head. "I honestly don't know," I admitted. "I need some time to process all this." My father squeezed my shoulder. "Whatever you decide, we're here for you." Their unwavering support brought tears to my eyes. I hugged them both tightly, grateful for their presence. As the night wore on, I found myself in a daze. I went through the motions, thanking guests for coming, accepting congratulations that now felt hollow. My husband kept his distance, respecting my need for space. But I could feel his eyes on me. Finally, the last guest departed. We stood in the empty hall, the silence between us deafening. "What happens now?" he asked softly. I took a deep breath. "Now we talk. Really talk. No more secrets, no more hidden agendas. I need to know everything." He nodded, looking relieved and terrified in equal measure. "Okay, where do you want to start?" We talked for hours, delving into the early days of our relationship. He admitted to initially seeing me as a networking opportunity, but insisted his feelings had quickly become genuine. He spoke of his overbearing parents and the pressure he'd always felt to succeed at any cost. I shared my own insecurities, how I'd sometimes wondered if I was holding him back in his career. We laughed, we cried, and slowly the wall between us began to crumble. As dawn broke, we were exhausted but lighter. There was still much to work through, but for the first time since his mother's announcement, I felt hope. "I love you," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "These past 10 years have been real. I swear it. Please don't let my initial mistake ruin everything we've built." I studied his face, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. "I love you too," I replied. "But rebuilding trust will take time." He nodded. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Couples therapy, taking a step back from work, anything." "And your mother?" I asked pointedly. His jaw clenched. "I've already told her she's not welcome in our lives unless she can respect our marriage. Dad agrees with me." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. "Okay," I said. "Then let's take it one day at a time." He pulled me into a gentle embrace, and I allowed myself to relax into his familiar warmth. We had a long road ahead, but I was cautiously optimistic. As we left the venue, hand in hand, I couldn't help but reflect on the irony. Our 10th anniversary had nearly torn us apart, but it had also forced us to confront issues we'd both been avoiding. In a way, it was a new beginning. I didn't know what the future held, but I was committed to fighting for our marriage. And this time we'd do it with complete honesty and open communication. The sun was rising as we drove home, casting a golden glow over the city. It felt symbolic somehow, the dawn of a new chapter in our relationship. There would be challenges ahead, but facing them together, I believed we could emerge stronger than ever. As we pulled into our driveway, my husband turned to me. "Thank you," he said softly, "for giving us another chance." I squeezed his hand. "We've invested 10 years in this marriage. It's worth fighting for." He smiled, a glimmer of his old charm shining through. "How about we start with breakfast? I make a mean omelet." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in hours. "Sounds perfect." Walking into our home, I realized that while the foundations of our marriage had been shaken, they weren't broken beyond repair. With hard work, honesty, and a renewed commitment to each other, we had a chance at something even stronger and more authentic than before. As my husband busied himself in the kitchen, I sat at our familiar breakfast bar, watching him work. The rhythmic sound of chopping vegetables and the sizzle of the pan felt comfortingly normal after the chaos of the night. "You know," I said thoughtfully, "in a weird way, I'm almost grateful to your mother." He looked up, surprised. "Grateful? For trying to blow up our marriage?" I shrugged. "For forcing us to have this conversation. We've both been avoiding some hard truths, and now everything's out in the open. It's painful, yes, but maybe it's what we needed to move forward." He nodded slowly. "You're right. I've been carrying this guilt for so long, afraid to tell you the truth. It feels freeing, in a way, to have it all out there." As he slid a perfectly cooked omelet onto my plate, I realized that this was the most honest conversation we'd had in years. There was still a long way to go, but it was a start. "So," I said, taking a bite, "tell me about that big case you're working on, the one you couldn't talk about before because of confidentiality issues." His eyes lit up, and as he launched into an explanation, I found myself truly listening, asking questions, engaging in a way I hadn't in far too long. We talked for hours about work, our dreams, our fears. It was as if a dam had broken, and all the things we'd been holding back came rushing out. It wasn't all easy. There were moments of hurt, of anger, of confusion, but underlying it all was a sense of reconnection, of rediscovering the person I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. As the day wore on, we made plans. Couples therapy was a priority, as was setting clearer boundaries with his family. We talked about our careers, how to balance our ambitions with our relationship. For the first time in years, I felt like we were truly partners, working together instead of in parallel. That evening, as we curled up on the couch, emotionally exhausted but oddly invigorated, my husband turned to me with a serious expression. "I want to renew our vows," he said. "Not now, not until we've done the work and rebuilt what was broken, but someday when we're ready, I want to stand up in front of our friends and family and choose you all over again, this time with complete honesty and understanding." Tears pricked my eyes as I nodded. "I'd like that," I whispered. As I drifted off to sleep that night, my husband's arm around me, I realized that while our 10th anniversary hadn't been the celebration we'd planned, it had given us something far more valuable. A chance at a new beginning, built on a foundation of truth and mutual understanding. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited about our future together. Sometimes it takes a moment of crisis to realize what truly matters. In our case, it took my mother-in-law's misguided announcement to shake us out of complacency and remind us of the love and partnership at the core of our relationship. 10 years down, and a lifetime to go. This time, with our eyes wide open and our hearts fully committed,